is going to cause some more strife in the world affairs in geopolitical terms. It's October 18th, 2016. This is liveuamap.com. This is uploaded social media, typically at real time, and this is Syria with some of Iraq, Western Iraq, and some of the events unfolding there at the moment. The Iraqi coalition is looking to push out ISIS from Mosul. The operation started yesterday, and there are already reports that some ISIS are fleeing Western Iraq for eastern Syria, and Russian and Syrian officials are warning that ISIS is looking to take this small holdout of Deir ez-Zor from the regime-controlled bases here. And one of the big debates unfolding currently is the unprecedented, unrelenting bombing of Aleppo and the destruction there of UNESCO World Heritage Sites, civilians, hospitals, makeshift hospitals, and other infrastructure, including water and electricity. And one of the things that has been reported is the current siege of Aleppo, and you see the regime forces with Iraqi, Iranian, and Russian assistance have encircled eastern Aleppo and control western Aleppo, and fierce fighting has been going on here for several weeks now. And rebel forces, Free Syrian Army, and its allies had managed to open a military corridor to relieve the siege that was promptly cancelled by the regime forces, and they have since resumed the siege. One of the reasons I think that this is about to get worse than it has already, which is hard to imagine, is the recent Free Syrian Army, Turkish army force that has been pushing out the Islamic State from northern Syria. And the reasons why they are doing it is making this even more complicated as the Turkish army backs Free Syrian rebels and taking territory that was originally sovereign Syrian territory occupied by the Islamic State, who in turn had evicted the Kurdish and Arab populations and Christian populations from the area. What this map shows is the complexities in the events that are going, because you have so many forces. You have Kurdish forces who want autonomy. You have rebels who want to establish their new free Syria. You have the Islamic State who wants to create and establish their caliphate. And you have the Russian regime who wants to maintain northern Syria as its sovereign country from the borders that it originally was. What I want to show here is just what the proximity of all these are, as this entanglement has put all of these forces together, where almost all of these forces in one way or another are fighting each other, whether it's the Turkish army and the Free Syrian Army against the Islamic State against the Kurdish forces, or Kurdish forces against the Free Syrian Army, and to some extent the Kurdish forces and the Syrian regime. However, a ceasefire has pretty much been established between the Kurdish forces and the regime forces, which has led to more tension with the Free Syrian Army, allied rebels, and the Islamic State because they see them as aligning with the regime, and therefore an enemy in that sense. So when you look at what the Turkish army has accomplished by forcing out Islamic State forces, is they've just about made it to, it's been back and forth, but about Tel Malid. Now, Kurdish forces have been reporting that they've been attacked indiscriminately with fire, and some reports that the Free Syrian Army intends to go all the way to Aleppo. And that's where I want to point out this is when you look at this map and you look at the roads that lead to Aleppo, and you look at this area controlled by the regime. This is the Aleppo industrial zone. I'm going to switch over here, and we're just going to measure this out really quick because the live view map doesn't really show the proximity. And when you look, if the extent of the Turkish-backed Free Syrian Army is about roughly here, so we'll just push it up a little bit north of there. We're only talking about 15 miles. So within 15 miles, the Turkish army and the Free Syrian Army are that close to becoming in direct contact with regime forces. Now, that would be the first time that the Turkish army is directly contacting the Syrian army and their military conflict. Now, what that could unleash is just unnerving, because if the Russian-backed forces continue to support the Syrian regime as they have, then we're going to see an all-out ground war occur as Turkey tries to establish itself as a regional force in this conflict. And the other item I want to point out is once that ground war is established and then aerial support starts coming in, this is the S-400 surface-to-air missile system that was installed by the Russians at their air base. And this is the range of the S-400. And here you can see we have Incirlik Air Base here and Akrotiri Air Base here, and this is pretty extensive in what the S-400 can monitor and effectively defend. So within 15 miles, you have forces that are about to unleash a very, very serious war. And that is how it is unfolding. So I'm going to keep this tuned. And we'll see how this unfolds. It will probably take maybe 2 weeks for this battle to reach Aleppo, maybe a month. In the meantime, we'll also be watching how the Iraqi front on Mosul unfolds as Islamic State forces defend or evacuate to Deir ez-Zor. See how that unfolds. And we'll also be watching this front here. Southern Homs province, northern Hama province. This has been an ongoing battlefront for the Free Syrian Army, or allies of all the different and ever-changing entities from Jabhat al-Nusra and Ahrar al-Sham. And we will see if they'll be able to continue their push for Hama and try to choke out this supply corridor for the regime to Aleppo. And this is another instance of how all of these entities are entwined. One would wonder why the Free Syrian Army or the Islamic State cannot manage to cut off this supply route, as this corridor is relatively less than a kilometer. So we'll keep watching this and we'll see how the world turns. So this is a political shift opinion piece, and I hope to have many more, and we can all see if this is just another regional conflict or this becomes a world war.